Hey everyone, we're back and we're doing our Bible study and we are on to Revelation chapter 18. So we are getting really close to the end. And remember Revelation chapter 16, we had the bowls that were poured out, and those were the final judgments, the wrath of God poured out on the earth. And it was an example of hell and hell on earth. And the final one was the earthquakes and the hail, and that the city of Babylon was destroyed. So then chapter 17 and chapter 18 just kind of talk about Babylon and explain what that means. So in chapter 18, we talked about the woman, which is part of Babylon, and that was more the religious aspect of Babylon. And then in chapter 18, we're talking about the city of Babylon. So there's a couple of arguments that people have about chapter 18. So one argument is that Babylon fell under Nebuchadnezzar, and then it was never really great again, and that eventually it became not like no one lives there, even though today we know that there is buildings there today. Saddam Hussein in 1980s, he built a temple, he built a palace, and he built an amphitheater, and he began to build the walls. So in Isaiah chapter 13 and in Jeremiah chapter 51. So if you want to write those down, it's Isaiah chapter 13 verses 19 to 20 and Jeremiah chapter 51 verses 26 to 43. We hear that Babylon is going to be completely destroyed. It's prophesied. It's going to be utterly wiped out. It's going to be wrath from God shown, and that it will be uninhabitable after that. So some people believe that that happened and that it's done now, that prophecy is finished, and that what we're looking here in Revelation chapter 18, it's not the actual city of Babylon. But the other argument, and the one that I personally believe in, is that those prophecies in Jeremiah and Isaiah are talking about something that hasn't happened yet. And the reason is because when the Medes and Persians came in and conquered Babylon, it was swift and quick and unexpected. So Babylon thought it was impossible for anyone to conquer them because they had a river that went all the way around the walls, and the walls went down into the river, so it was impossible, and the gates were down there. It was impossible to get through. But what happened is the Medes and Persians, they diverted the river, so they were able to just kind of walk in, and then there's people there had the gates open for them so they could just go in. So people were partying and having all these parties, and you can read about that in the book of Daniel. When they woke up in the morning, the military was already there. They already had control. So it wasn't a bloodless takeover, but it's almost a bloodless takeover. So people were killed. Obviously, they went and killed a leadership of Babylon. Daniel, of course, survives and goes on to become leadership in the Medes and Persians Empire. But there wasn't a big military fight they took over. The citizens just continued to live there, just now they had somebody else ruling over them. It was sudden, but it wasn't mass destruction. It also wasn't from God. So that isn't what was talked about in Jeremiah or Isaiah. And then it was kind of a slow demise where it just kind of kept going down. Like the Medes and Persians, it wasn't as great as it was under the Babylonian, and then under the Greece, it kind of fell a lot. And then Alexander the Great tried to rebuild it, and then he died suddenly. And then under Rome, it just kind of fell apart. And then eventually it became to the point where it wasn't being lived in. But it's not uninhabitable. You can go there and live there today. And you can live in the castle or in the temple, so it's not uninhabitable. So I don't believe that Isaiah and Jeremiah prophesying about the end of Babylon has taken place yet. I believe it still has to come. And then I believe that's what chapter 18 is talking about. So what we see is an angel tells the doom of Babylon and says that it's destroyed. It says it twice. And so that's extra emphasis. We see how evil Babylon is. We learn that it is the trade center of the world at this point. And the believers are told to flee. So they're giving, get out of the city. So if there's any believers living in the city, they are told to get out of the city because it is about to be destroyed. And then we see that in one day, Babylon is completely destroyed. So the monarchs, the kings, the rulers of other nations, they are shocked, like absolutely shocked at what happens. So I kind of picture it, for me, for the only thing I can relate this to is September 11th. So I lived in the States during that time, and I was just, regular day, going to class, and then all of a sudden we hear that something is happening. We go watching the news, And it was so shocking to all of us how suddenly and quickly the trade towers fell. And we can remember the emotions that we had that day. This is going to be like 100 times worse because the entire city is going to be destroyed suddenly and in a shocking way and quickly. So it says the merchants are going to mourn because this is, remember, you can only buy and sell through the mark of the beast. And so all of your buying, all of your selling, all of your trade goes back to Babylon. So Babylon is done at the end of this chapter. The rulers of the world are in shock. The merchants are in shock. You can't buy or sell anything anymore because everything goes back to Babylon for all of their trade. Christians are rejoicing because this is the fall of Babylon. This is the fall of the empire that has been killing them. And then we see at the very end that the word no more is used 7 times throughout this chapter. So one of the things that I would say is when the video ends, you're going to pick up your Bible, right? You're going to read for yourself Revelation chapter 18, take a pen and underline every time you see the word no more. This is final destruction. Babylon is done. And if you haven't gone and looked at the video that we did, the bonus video that talks about the history of Babylon, think about that, watch that video, and if you have watched it already, think about that. Think about how this is world religions. This is religions that don't follow Jesus. This is religions that don't follow God. They are done. They are no more at the end of this chapter. So Revelation chapter 18 is the end of Babylon. So take your Bible now, jump into Revelation chapter 18. We only have a couple of chapters left. We're almost through the book of Revelation. I'm Laura Lee Siemens. You're watching Bible series. You just finished Revelation chapter 18.